because we're talking about POWs in German camps and Asian camps. But the most important thing is that we don't just talk about it. I have a guest who has talked with those POWs. And I don't know how many there are left, Charles. Charles Gabriel, professional photographer, I see at almost all of the events. But until the last one, I didn't know that you had done these interviews.
I've been working with these guys for about 14, 15 years, and the greatest guys, humble, wonderful.
Where did you find them?
I met them years ago. My father was on the Vestal, a ship at Pearl Harbor. He was on then, he was on a year or so later. I went to an event that George Bush was at, and the Pearl Harbor guys were there, and then the next event, I met them. And I go to their meetings every Tuesday. They have a support group, and they're the best guys in the world. They've gone through hell. They've gone on death marches. One guy, Rudy, jumped out of a plane. 2 guys, 1 parachute. A lot of guys, they didn't have any disability for years, and Rudy, one of the guys, Vidmar, helped him get 100%. So that's one good thing about the Veterans Administration.
Were these mostly POWs from the Asian theater, from the Pacific?
Mostly from Germany.
Oh, okay.
But there's some Asian too. And the Asian, I just went to a reunion in New Orleans for the guys who got captured at Bataan, Corregidor, and Guam. And these guys, some of these guys, the stories they tell you, where they're down to their last bullet. That's why they had to surrender. And there was a guy just gave me this when not long ago. Was on August 24th there was a decree to kill all POWs because the invasion was supposed to be on September 1st, and the war was over. So I never knew that either. There's so much to know. I mean, the more you talk to these guys, the more you learn. And the more you learn, the less you know. Does that make sense?
And, Charles, needless to say, you're talking to guys that are finally running out of numbers.
Yeah.
And by the way, talking about the Pacific Theater, you gave me a story I had never seen before.
Neither have I. A friend of mine named Marvin just moved away. He was caught in Guam, and he gave that to me. This B-29 plane got shot down. They were captured, and they did experiments on them. For sure, it's a fact.
Did you, in conversation with the POWs in both areas of World War II, did you find that the treatment in general was different?
Yes.
In the European theater than in the Asian theater?
The Germans, the Americans in Germany had it a little bit better. Please don't think they had it good. They had it better than the Japanese. But the Japanese guys had it really hard.
All right, well, give me one story. Just the first thing that comes to your mind of one guy in a German POW camp. We're not talking about Hogan's Heroes now. We're talking about real life.
Okay. They go on their own death marches. One guy, they say, the war's ending soon. They go on a death march, and they march it for months. And some of the guys try to hide in the hay in barns, and they start the hay on fire. And it's horrible what they went through. And I think it's hard for them to talk about it. They only started talking about it about 15 years ago. I think 9/11 helped them a little bit because it was in the air to talk about stuff. But they never really talked about it.
Well, so many times, veterans of virtually any combat, I mean, as recently as Afghanistan, when they come home, they just simply don't want to share those stories.
No, they don't. I don't know if they're not embarrassed, they're just, it's a hard time for them. And when they came back, the American government told them not to talk about it.
Why?
It was over. Move on.
Well, it wasn't over for them.
Yes, and they said to me, by being in these camps, it would take 10 to 15 years off their lives. So a lot of these guys are lucky to be alive at this age, at 91, 92.
Have they been reasonably taken care of?
Now they have. But for years, they said there's nothing wrong with them, and they all had PTSD, all of them. You don't be in a prisoner of war camp and don't get PTSD.
Before we could even know that there was that group of letters and what it meant. I mean, a long time ago, it was called shell-shocked.
Shell-shocked or battle fatigue.
What do you have here?
This is, I just went back, I went to that reunion, and then...
hold it right up.
It's just a little license plate, and it's, you know.
Yeah,
and
but when you see that on a car, you better pay attention.
Because there's only a couple guys alive. And some of these guys are so sharp. I talked to this one guy, he was a special agent, and he told MacArthur, I know where the planes are that's going to attack us. And they don't necessarily like MacArthur at all. And I goes, I know where they're at. Let's get them before they get us. And MacArthur didn't do anything.
What about this?
Does you know what this is? I got this as a boy, and when I used to work with the Pearl Harbor guys. There's only a couple left now, and I would actually get the guys to sign it in Pearl Harbor. So it's just a simple postcard book, and they all signed it. There's hundreds of guys. It's just something I did.
Yeah, but remember, Pearl Harbor still has meaning.
And they tell me so many great stories because I've been interviewing them also, and they'll tell me a story where there was a bugler. We hated this guy. We told him to stop. We stop playing in this. And like, if you don't stop playing, we're going to send you up to the mountains where they're watching for the planes. And they sent him up there. He had no idea how to look for planes. So there's so many missteps and stuff. There's so many great stories.
Could we have averted Pearl Harbor reasonably?
Always. Always. You can always avert everything.
Charles, when are you going to write the book?
I'm going to do the documentary. So I got about 30 hours of each, at least 30 to 40 hours of interviews with the POWs and interviews with the Pearl Harbor survivors.
When it's made available, you're going to tell us on our audience, right?
I will for sure. Thank you very much.
The Morning Scramble. Yeah, don't forget those guys ever, even when the last one is gone. Back in just a moment. Oh, it's Italiano.